Namaskaram. Today I would like to share with you the knowledge of the traditional Indian grid used by the craftsmen in India. It has been a practice in India that children at the age of 5 are made to listen to the sounds of nature, see the flowers, the mountains, the skies, the wind, feel the wind, the water, the sounds of the streams, and then they're initiated into the basics of the craft practiced by the parents. In India, the grid was always a part of tradition, and it has been practiced with the faith to the extent of religious doctrine. It has a large variety in form and application. In the past few centuries, the meaning of grid has shifted from interface between physical and superphysical worlds to interface between physical world and its perception by the rational cognition. Process of creation is an initiation and a sharing knowledge of the craft and information gathered and referred from nature. Listening, seeing, feeling, understanding, and experiencing the physical forms and worshipping this source of creation gave an immense joy of being part of it. It was a source of wonder and an aesthetic which made living a wonderful experience. Life in nature and its adaptation to its surroundings was a visual experience. This knowledge led to create things. The basics were from nature, the geometry to the existence and the functions of the five elements made creating of objects with added functionality a joyful experience. From making of houses and shrines to toys for children to weaving, to cultivation and gathering of food, to making of vessels for cooking and using fire as a source of energy have a reference in nature. Looking for an answer or an idea is unique. People in various geographical regions have created and adapted things for the requirements which are related and referred to their surroundings. Hence the change of aesthetic and functionality of things created. There is so much creation around us. Being part of this creation helps in understanding nature better. One tends to look inside oneself and share that experience. The experience is different, hence the variation in the same idea which makes creating an object exciting. This started a process of trade with and within the communities. The exercise in this set is creating a product and images from shared information from nature. I have tried to use this aesthetic in blending it into the narrative of nature. We start with circle and line. The circle is the feminine principle and it makes you look towards the center. It is static and it has space. The line is the masculine principle. It is not creative until used. It is dynamic, free, running into space, and unlimited or infinite. The line and circle brings one to a conscious state. The mind is able to see boundaries and retains an awareness of self. There are two ways of seeing, seeing in a linear way and seeing together as a whole. The circle is the universe. The breath of life is contained in its form. The circle consists of a center and has a boundary. The center is the support called the bindu and is stable like consciousness. The circle is divided into two by a vertical line and then into four by a horizontal line, while the resulting four areas are the four corners of the universe and the four directions northeast, southeast, southwest, and northwest. The line is the support of the composition, on which one builds the image which corresponds to the elements and to the gods. Straight lines are like the rays of light as the Creator divided the world. From these intersecting lines, a square is formed and the diagonal representing the winds. The points are added. A square is formed. The square is Ganesha. The Kilpinjara binds and energizes the space and links to its surrounding spaces. The idea of the Trihuta. The triangle represents the concepts of fire and humanity. verticality, and characteristic of the human species. It is also believed to be the axis on which the universe revolves and the links between earth and human, mankind and divinity. The union of these two opposites of fire and water that creation arises, and it is by their interaction that is ceaselessly vitalized and maintained. This symbol is known as the symbol of attraction of opposites or the Akarshani Yantra. The grid is a matrix of 5 lines by 5, making 16 identical squares or rectangles, intersected by 2 diagonals. This recalls the original creation of the universe when Purusha, the cosmic form, sacrificed himself into 16 parts. Here you'll find the markings of fire, earth, water, air, and space. Now I'll take you to a reference to these elements in the 5 temples in Tamil Nadu. The first one being Ekambareshwara in Kanchi, which represents earth, where Parvati comes down to earth to worship Shiva. The next is Jambukeshwara in Srirangam, represents the water element. Arunachaleshwara in Arunachalam represents the fire element. Sri Kalahasteshwara at Sri Kalahasti representing air, where it is believed that the spider, the snake, and an elephant looked after the Shivlingam at different periods of time. Tillai Natarajar at Chidambaram representing space. At this temple, there's an empty Garbhagudi where Shiva is worshipped as space, in front of which is a small Trishul, on which is a garland of Bilva Patras. Coming back to the grid, the bottom row of 4 squares from the foot to the knee represents earth. The next from the knee to the navel represents the reproductive energy. The third from the navel to the neck is the area of life breath. And the top from the neck to the crown is the area of divine light. Coming to Bindu, the basic uh, element, Bindu and its living areas. When Bindu expands in space in a linear surface, becomes a circle. And when it expands in space, it becomes a sphere. So the circle and sphere are basics. Formation of a triangular space is with intersection of 3 lines, and when these 3 lines move away from each other, you get a triangle. And these triangles are Shiva and Shakti, or it is fire and water, and when they combine, they form the Akarshani Yantra. The combination of Shiva and Shakti, of water and fire, represents Ganesha in the square form. So whenever we start working on a given space, we consider that as a holy space or a divine space. These are the 5 basic shapes representing the gods. Devi as an inverted triangle, Shiva as a vertical triangle, Surya as a circle, Ganesha as a square, and the disk is Vishnu. The string and the nail. In the Indian tradition, we use a string and 2 nails for drawing the basics. So here we see how with that we can draw a circle. Here it is creation of the polygon, the triangle, creation of an equilateral triangle. These are all basic geometric forms. Creation of a square. In the Indian tradition, we are taught to go into the forests, to the mountains, to the riversides, just to see nature, how the construction of various elements in nature are, from the leaves to the flowers to the rocks, the way the water flows, to feel the presence of energies, to feel the emotions, what we relate to. And here are a few examples of flowers which can be used as a reference point for design construction. Now we are trying to mimic what we saw in nature. Say here the example is flowers. So we're taking a four petal flower and we're seeing how it can be geometrically drawn. So we have the vertical line connecting the centers. Then you have another horizontal line connecting the centers of the two circles. The combination to make four petals from the overlapping circles. Then the construction of the square in the overlapping circles, dividing the square into half diagonally, and construction of the octagon by drawing a dynamic square. The two static squares and the two dynamic squares. The outer square is divided into 4 and then to 16 smaller parts. The space division of the octagon in which is inscribed the square and a circle. The 8 spaces formed represent the 8 directions. In figure 1, the circle is dynamic and in motion. The repetition of the dynamic circle shows strength of the given space. An equilateral triangle is formed with the third circle, drawn with the center point at the intersection of the two circles. As the circles move apart, touching the circumference of each of the circles, another triangle is formed, a combination of 4 same-sized circles. A grid of 9 equilateral triangles and its multiples. These are just the basics of how our ancestors learned from nature and started using it. These are very simple exercises, but these can become very complicated as you go into temple constructions or design, creating bas reliefs and designs. This is a construction of a hexagon and its possible repetitions. Intersection of 6 circles which become the centers for another set of 6 circles. Then you have the construction of a hexagon. This is the construction of a 5-pointed star which represents Earth. Construction of a 10-pointed star overlapping of 2 pentagons. And then construction of a 10-pointed star resulting in a flower pattern. Now this is how we start developing spaces. And then we start using different decorative elements in these spaces to create beautiful mandalas. The measure of 5. The potter on a spinning wheel makes beautiful shapes of pots, and each pot has a proportion of 1 is to 4, 2 is to 3, 3 is to 2, and 4 is to 1. These are because of the 5 fingers. And the variations are 1 is to 2 is to 2, 2 is to 2 is to 1, 3 is to 1 is to 1, and 1 is to 1 is to 3. Here are a few references of pots made for the temple of Jagannath. These are cooking pots in the Jagannath temple with the Shanku Chakra marked on it. This is the water pot, another water pot. There's a third different style of, and that is the gullak, where you put in small change so that during festivities that money could be offered in the temples. Now comes the rhythmic measure. Rhythmic measure is the measurement of the human body with the expanse of a palm from the thumb to the top of the middle finger. The length of the face is in figure 1. Length of the kai chan. Kai chan is in Tamil where is the kai is hand and the chan is spread. The hand spread. Corresponding length of the face and the hand. This is the measurement of the body in terms of the fingers, the phalanges, the face in the shape of Tamil letter Va and the mango shaped face, the egg shaped face and the sesame shaped face, eye shaped like a fish, eye shaped like a lotus, waist following the shape of a damru, waist shaped like the vajram, the arm shaped like a bamboo, the male torso shaped like the head of the bull. It is considered in traditional Indian sculpture that the gods are created with elements from nature is actually indirectly worshipping nature than the god forms. Coming to Mugu. Mugu is the Rangoli. The Mugu is considered representation of the universe on the on earth. So wherever you draw the Mugu is representing that universe in that particular spot to make it energized. They have different names, and these are some of the very old Mugu designs, uh, which all have a name. This is Chavanti pattern of chrysanthemum. This is the swastika with lotus pattern. This is the Nabhi Kamala pattern. This is Chandu pattern or the ball. This is Gathoda pattern or the bundle. This is taken from Maharashtra. This is Anantasana pattern, the seat of the Ananta flowers. This is Vaishwadeva Kunda pattern or the fireplace. That's where the homams are done after they draw this figure. Now coming to the Yantras. These are symbols which are used. The first one is static, the Bindu. The second is expression of Bindu through the radius of desire. The vertical line is desire, activity, and dynamic. The horizontal is stability, shortest distance between 2 points. There's a static Bindu and there is another dynamic sound. Or another, there's the upward movement, the downward movement, addition, subtraction, division, multiplication, expression, dynamic. Static earth, dynamic, preservation, balance between static and dynamic. Restricted expression is static, restricted expression dynamic. The top is equilibrium, the vertical triangle is expression, dynamic, upward movement, fire male. The downward pointed triangle is downward movement, water female. The Akarshani Yantra condensed is equilibrium dynamic, and the non-condensed is equilibrium static, and the five-pointed star, the earth. Clockwise movement of creation is swastika. The flipped swastika is counterclockwise movement, destruction and dissolution. The swastika with lines, diagonal lines, and the four dots is symbol of Om and Ganesha. The next one is Om and swastika. A circle is space, and the other is expansion. Expression, manifestation, as they call it. You have the circle with 8 petals, each petal showing one particular direction. In a yantra, east is at the top and west at the bottom, south at the right and north at the left. This is based on the marking of directions based on the sun. It's very interesting that when the markings are done on the ground, A pole is fixed on the earth, and then they wait for the sun to rise, singing songs, singing bhajans, and playing a rhythmic beat. As the sun rises, they worship the sun and then start marking the shadow of that pole to get the western direction. Then they mark at noon the shadow where it falls, and then as the sun sets, they mark the east. It is never a straight line and it is a curve. And this curve keeps changing daily because of the direction of the sun and the earth is never the same. That's the reason why we have interesting things happening in various temples, because that is the day when the temple was built. The construction of the yantra. Now, yantra is not something which is very holy or auspicious. Yantra is basically a design, a drawing. This is the Ganesh yantra. Similarly, we have yantras for various gods, and these are also used as measurements, and these are also used as elements of the five representing five elements. Arriving at the final grid construction, the square representing Ganesha, we call it Ganesha because it's supposed to be the divine space, and how we put elements on this to create design. It's further divided vertically and horizontally by segments F, H, and E, G. These represent the directions east, west, and north, south. These are further divided diagonally by segments DB and AC. These represent the other four directions. The intersection point is the Bindu. When there are 2 points, they tend to attract each other, or there is a unknown line which is reacting between those 2 points, which we call as the energy lines. These energy lines between the points are joined. These energy lines between the points is joined to identify the flow of energy between the points. And then you draw a circle. Same with that of the square is marked for the visible area. This is based on the human condition where we tend to see in a circular space. When we focus at a point, we only see that point and the little circular space around it, but the rest of it is out of focus. That's the reason why we draw the circle to mark the area which is visible to the eye. The following arcs FE, EH, HG, and GF are to help move the vision towards the outer area of space. And Fe, EH, HG, and GF are also connected to mark the flow of energy and to contain it. A half circle, same width as that of the square, is placed facing the sides of the square, forming a four-petal flower. This is the space with the maximum hot points, and the four hot points between the petals hold the energy levels together. These are four circles, half the width of square, are placed inside the square as shown. These are the visible areas in the quarters AFOE, FB, GO, EOHD, and OGCH. They also face the directions of northeast, southeast, southwest, and northwest. Similarly, four more circles of the same size are placed facing east, west, north, south, and center. Now, instead of four circles, you could also have three circles, taking reference of a three-petal flower. This is the yantra, the grid for space division and management of space. To this, a layer is added to divide the square into smaller spaces of 9 into 9 units. This helps in managing the hotspots in the given space. You could also work on any number of units, divide it into any number of units, I generally use 30 by 30 because that I found to be very easy to work. Each of these squares could be further divided into 10 by 10 or 9 by 9 so that you could get more details in those given spaces. Now drawings based on the square grid. That's Durga, and that's how it looks once it's finished. That's Matsya, Chamundeshwari, there's Garuda, and Anantasayana. Coming to my calligraphic work, this is Buddha under the peepal tree, Ganesha and other people playing musical instruments. That's representing Balaji Venkateshwara in Tirupati with Hanuman and Garuda, the Vahanas. That's Nandi, the bull. On the hump, they put a snake and they sing bhajans and take the bull all around the village for people to worship. There's Krishna, the cowherd. That is Adinatha. Adinatha is represented with an animal, the Nandi. That's the Dashavataras. That's Shiva in the form of lamps and different Nandis sitting all around. Now coming to nibs. These are the nibs I use. And these are the vessels I use to hold the ink. I use them so that they don't spill. And this round container at the bottom has 4 projections so that the surface of the container doesn't touch the paper. So I can move it where there's no lines and then take it very close to the place where I work. This is how it looks from the top. And this is one thing which is so sturdy that it does not move, one, and is not spilling. And you could actually take it very close to your work area. The nibs need to be cleaned immediately. It can't be left dipped in ink for long periods of time. So immediately it needs to be cleaned with tissue paper, wet tissue, so that the ink goes off completely. Avoid using warm water because it spoils the nib, and don't keep it in ink for very long time. This is the container I use for cleaning my nibs. The reason I use a metal container is to hear the sound, the nice tingling ting sound uh, when I wash the nibs, when the nib touches the surface of the container. If it is a flat thud sound, that means the nib is not clean, but only when you get that nice sound that you know the nib is clean. Now I'd like to share how the products can be designed using the square grid. Usually what happens is we all as human beings have an aesthetic sense. It varies a little bit from person to person. And what we are actually doing is by using the grid, we are trying to tune in everyone to the same aesthetic as possible, closer to nature. These are mobile shrines. You see how the grid is used to divide the spaces and mark. This is how they look. You open it up to have a small medallion with the god which is worshipped. These are water vessels, vessels for Panchamrit, the Kalashams, the Jambu for milk and water. Usually what happens is the puja room, you spill a lot of water. So what I've done is I've used thick vessels, and the lid is also very heavy. This is a combination of bronze and copper. This is a lamp with a lid. These are small lamps, but they light up for about 3 hours. Another lamp. There's a multi-wick lamp with a Garuda on it, so you know it is Vaishnav. If there's a Trishul, then it is Shaivite. The Agarbatti stand, the Dhoop stand, the Aarti with the stand, Uddinas, the vessel for flowers and offerings. This is another vessel for flowers and offerings. There's the Shatkam where the feet of the god is marked, generally used in the puja room for prayers or to get blessed. There's the Ghanta. Jaraghanta is a plate, sort of an instrument, which is struck by a wooden stick. It has a small string to hold, and it has got a very peculiar shape which emits out vibrations which clears the mind completely of any thoughts. Then the Arati stand. The peacock is there in the center to represent that it is being used in the Jagannath temple of Puri. Kancham or Thala, it has the markings of the Shanku Chakra. The Shank is on the top and the Chakra is at the bottom. These are very traditional vessels used in North Andhra Pradesh and Odisha and parts of Bengal and Assam too. The Guinea or the Bati, the glasses, Jambu, Goti, this is the Ghora, Kujo, Bindi, whatever. And that's the Gulak in copper. Offerings which are collected over a period of time, kept in the puja room and offered in the temples. So these are some of the designs which could be done in the grid, not only used for creating products, but it also can be used for creating fonts, for logos and trademarks, to interiors, and for even architecture, because these grids are used for temple architecture. You could have your own grids. You can create your own grids using your own reference material from nature and make your designs look very unique and different. Enjoy designing. Have a good time. Namaskaram.